Yeah, and that was an amazing track. I mean, that was one of the biggest bucks I've ever seen, for one. And the as far as you tracked it, I mean, he went a crazy I couldn't even believe you guys tracked him that far yourselves through that swamp, and how thick that cattail was. That was like that cattail was taller than me, definitely. So, and yeah, it's a lot of fun tracking, and we took.
Oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
My name is Drew Tvrdik. I'm your host this week for Fall Obsession Podcast. This is the first episode of the Midwest edition. My first guest this week is Naz. You guys have heard the story from last year about me tracking my deer that I shot here. Had quite a track, had a little bit of difficulty finding it, decided to back out and call in some tracking dogs. So Naz, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm Naz, part of Minnesota Tracking Dogs. Currently, as I reside in Anoka, Minnesota, I currently have 2 tracking dogs, Chevy, who you met last year, and a new puppy who needs some training. He's very young, so, but yeah, I love Chevy. He's on his, this will be his 3rd year of tracking and his third birthday coming up in September. So that lab, he's a black lab, mix, mutt, call him the super mutt. I found out recently I may have been mixed up with what he was as a breed before. I used to think he was a black lab German Shepherd, but
I mean, he looks like it.
Right, but he's actually a black lab Saint Bernard, and then the sire was a border collie.
Okay.
Just a farm dog who I decided to take into tracking after I watched Shane Simpson's videos, Cali Chronicles on Facebook and YouTube. I was watching his videos. He basically got me inspired into tracking. But originally I started tracking with my old dog Chase, hence my name on Facebook, Chevy Chase, is where you can find myself and my contact if you need to get a hold of me this season. And so Chevy is my newer dog. Chase was an old lab I had. And so how I got into tracking was Chase is just a yellow lab bird dog that we had, family dog. I've grown up around dogs in the household as a kid, like since I was 2 years old, as young as I can remember. Chase was just a great family dog we had only until 6 years old. Unfortunately, he passed away due to cancer a little bit early, but wonderful dog. So I shot a few deer. I had some bad shots myself when I was younger, about 4 years ago, and we took Chase out, and I just decided to run him after these deer, and to my surprise, I didn't even know about tracking until after he found actually 2 deer for me that season, and I would have never found those deer without him. No blood, just not a good shot. Maybe my sight was off at the time. I couldn't recall, but it happens. So that's how I got into it. I remember tracking with my father when I was younger over in Wisconsin. He had bad shot placement before, and I actually saw this deer running behind me, but I couldn't even get another shot on it. But I could tell that was his deer because it was injured. And I remember we tracked that thing on hands and knees that whole night, and I just learned that tracking is also about wait times. I think we pushed that deer too early, and there's a misconception to, I believe, just around the community that you can track a deer right away when you leave the stand, but we've even gone after gut shots that a lot of times I want to wait 24 hours now with the dog before I send them out because I'm confident in my dog's tracking abilities at this point. And then because of the time, we've seen how long it can take at times for certain shot placements to actually, for a deer to fully expire at times. There are some crazy stories of deer laying down, just all of a sudden waking back up. We have a few as trackers, and it's a great community that I became a part of. I can't think of anything else I want to do more other than tracking lately. I kind of gave up a whole bunch of other hobbies to be a part of it, and so. And Chevy is my new dog. I got him as a pup 3 years ago, and I got him for the sole purpose of tracking, and that's all thanks to Shane. And he has wonderful videos and data on his site that I actually will use as reference, because he's got some great statistics here that are generalized, and it puts a very good perspective to hunting. So if you want to check that out, that's at ShaneSimpsonHunting.com. There's deer tracking data, and over the past few years, he put together this data that's very effective in my eyes, and so.
Yeah, I know that's something that, viewers from other parts of the country might not be familiar with, but that's something that is pretty interesting here in Minnesota. It's something that we recently legalized, and it's something that I know people are taking advantage of, watching that Minnesota Trackers page. It's amazing how many deer you guys are finding that in years past would have just been left to rot in the field, and, some actually pretty nice bucks that you guys are finding. So it's great to see.
Yeah.
I also find it pretty interesting that you and I got connected through the same person that got you into tracking. The Cali Chronicles is the page that I actually found that connected the two of us when I needed help finding my deer. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, and that was an amazing track. I mean, that was one of the biggest bucks I've ever seen, for one. And as far as you tracked it, I mean, he went a crazy I couldn't even believe you guys tracked him that far yourselves through that swamp, and how thick that cattail was. That cattail was taller than me, definitely. So, and yeah, it's a lot of fun tracking, and we took Chevy out, and he did wonderful. He really has a prey drive for some of those shots that I can tell a total difference in. Like that day, he just pulled like crazy, and that helps me read him a little easier. As compared to some tracks, he will slow down. But yeah, that one, he just went like crazy I think we advanced that one over another mile, aside from what you tracked it for.
Yeah, so from where I shot it, I think we had tracked it, as the crow flies, it was probably 600 to 800 yards, but as we'd kind of wound around and followed blood, it must have been close to a mile.
Oh yeah.
We'd crossed the creek 2 different times.
Yep.
And I mean, we were finding blood. It was right at shoulder height, and you'd see an inch or two size piece of the grass covered in blood. And then you'd look forward another 10 feet and see another one there. And so you'd be able to walk 10 feet at a time and move it up and move it up.
Yeah.
But I mean, I shot that deer in the morning and probably started tracking it around noon, like as far as got out of the stand, went and checked my arrow, saw the blood, saw that it was nice bright red blood, and started kind of following it. Found a bed where it had bedded and was like, all right, this is a pretty good sign. And just, the further we went and the longer it had been, and we had rain coming in, and it just got to a point where I couldn't track it anymore. And we'd cross that creek, and I got to a point and I was like, I'm going to back out from right here. I have to. There's really no other option. It's getting dark, and I've got to back out for the night with the rain. And then I started reaching out to you guys, and we were able to go right back to that spot, and it was amazing watching the dog pick up that scent from, I'd kind of guessed it had crossed the creek again, but we didn't really have a good idea of where it had started. And we checked that one side and nothing, and walked back over to the other side. And as soon as we had picked that scent up, that dog was pulling, and man, I was behind you trying to sprint to keep up. And,
yeah.
I know I lost you at one point in there, but it was a fast track. I think we did that extra mile and a half in less than 20 minutes. So to watch the dog work that scent was pretty crazy.
It's a workout at times with him being 75 pounds. A lot of the trackers carry smaller dogs. But yeah, and Hades, my new bloodhound, he's already getting big. He's at 16 weeks, over 30 pounds. So he's going to be huge. So I hear bloodhounds, them pulling you is like a 150-pound freight train. So it's gonna be exciting watching him grow up. But yeah, I like to roll with the big dogs. That's just me. It's just way easier to tell the body language when they're pulling you across the woods and everywhere. So
Yeah.
I just let him kind of take the reins, and that's the key, is learning how to trust the dog. And when it comes to tracking with a hound, if you can't trust the blood, which the tracking dogs aren't specifically trained to track for blood. That's how we start them. It's like when you start a puppy, they're super excited to see kibble and blood and a trail, and you start them on short distance, and then you start practicing longer distance is how we train them. Take the kibble away, less blood, then you start mixing in hooves together with it, because we are ultimately training the hounds on interdigital glands. There is other ways. There's more than one way to skin a cat, so maybe other people have other ways of training a puppy, but that's just how I've been doing it. Maybe some people intermix the hoof at the same stage of when they're introducing them to blood. But now I train my dog Chevy, sometimes with blood, sometimes without, just because I want him to get a mix, because not all tracks are the same. So we like to, what I call is simulate tracking as compared to hunting. Personally, I like to train when I get the chance to, is in the off season, train with my dog, sometimes even during the season if I can. Just get the dog on a training track or two, just because you learn to know where the dog is going. It's a training track. So, but ultimately there are scenarios where there's no blood, so we want to train a dog up to like 24 hours, sometimes even longer, to go past that point, and tracks without blood at times, and just hoofs, because the hoofs are always on the ground. There's always that scent, the interdigital gland, which is between the two hoofs of all 4 feet of the deer. And if you do want to train to track deer with your own dog, you can keep hoofs during the season, keep them fresh, keep them in a freezer, and then and reward your dog with hide or deer hoofs at the end, and give them a prize, and follow reward hierarchy with your pup. Some dogs like to just play after they find something. So that's how we start pups, and that's how we kind of get into it.
Nice. Now that interdigital scent must be kind of unique to the deer, right? Because I mean, I know the deer we tracked was crossing over other deer trails and even other fresh tracks where you could tell there had been another deer that had been, I mean, maybe even after the one that I'd shot crossed through there. So they must be able to tell the difference.
I believe it's sort of like I don't know the science behind it, but maybe like an adrenal gland. So when a deer is injured like such, they will give off that scent, because in a way it's a gland that alerts deer in the other area, I'm hurt, stay away. Or possibly maybe even other mammals, unfortunately, like coyotes and such. Dogs can scent that out. Coyotes are amazing at scenting that out. Oftentimes they can catch up before a tracker does, and it sucks, but they can even push your deer while it's still running too as well. So that's why we really like to, even if you're worried about, like, let's say coyotes getting at your deer overnight, it's best to just let the deer expire versus you just keep running it until you're out of blood. And then a lot of dogs, or every dog has a different prey drive. Some dogs maybe want to follow that scent of a deer running that's still alive, or they have the prey drive to just want to follow a dead deer, more so. All dogs for the most part can do both, but they will have a different body language. They will follow it differently, such as Chevy, the black lab who you saw. He is a great dog for the prey drive of a deer that's actually wounded and still running. He, for some reason, he enjoys that. Sometimes when he finds a dead deer, he's like, okay, what's next? So he's just kind of like sitting there and just kind of watching. But like you put him around a deer that's still maybe sleeping and resting within its bed but injured, he will chase it around town like crazy. And I think that's what we ran into, and he will pull like crazy. I've had to switch up like my gear. I used to use a hip harness. I can't use that no more. He pulls just way too hard, man. I switched to like a collar, and then I run it between his legs, and so that works a lot better with just it. I've noticed in training, I've gone in real world situations using that tracking collar, and yeah, that helped me a lot personally. But everybody uses different gear. It's good to try different things out. As a hobby, it's kind of like trying out a different gun to me. Or a bow. It's all about getting used to what you like as well as what your dog enjoys, and finding the right dog for you personally. A lot of dogs can track. There's no best breed. Best thing I think is a dog that can live with you in your home most of the time, or because you won't be tracking all the time, but
Right.
that dog will have that ability.
Right. Now, you had mentioned kind of the crossover process, or the switchover process from going from like blood and kibble into kind of taking away the kibble and eventually taking away some of the blood, moving into the interdigital. What's the timeline look like on that? What age is the puppy when you're starting to do that sort of transition, and how much training, I guess maybe more than the age of the puppy, how much training have you done at that point before you start kind of removing the food?
So per se, I'm not a trainer per se, but there are trainers who I know who can have a puppy at 6 months, maybe purebred. I've seen some at 6 months, mutts. Any dog, bird dog, I think, with the proper amount of training and the right knowledge around training. There is a tracking Bible written by John. I don't know how to say his last name, and I don't want to butcher it exactly, but it's John J. Let me look up the book name exactly.
Yep. I mean, we could talk a little bit more about some of the other stuff. I mean, one of the things I found the most interesting when you showed up was when you were putting on the rec specs. And, I'd seen him on TV and I'd seen him like advertised online, but that was the first dog that I'd seen him in the field. And I was kind of questioning, when I'd seen him online, how much the dogs are going to hate putting him on or whatever. And you put him on and it was like not a big deal. The dog knew it was time to work, and hey, we're going to go track an animal because now I got my glasses on. That was pretty cool to see.
Oh yeah. The thing is, training repetition is key. And put real live tracks are still obviously different. It puts out so much more scent to a dog. There's still a whole deer laying there, whether alive or dead. Or out there running, and there's a lot more scent involved, and that's the real world thing. You have a whole deer out there, that dog is going to enjoy it that much more as compared to training, but the repetition is key, and putting them on the tracks is the best real world perspective for tracking. The book is Tracking Dogs for Finding Wounded Deer by John Jay. That is a great resource for anybody starting out looking to get into it. Like you asked about the timeline, it all depends how much you train, how many real world tracks a dog takes, and just the exposure that dog gets, and the amount of time that repetition can set in for that dog. Maybe some breeds, maybe a certain dog breed develops at a later age. I've seen dogs at 6 months running 300, 400 yard tracks, amazing, spot on. Even my dog at 1 or 2 years old, he might not look as good on a map, but he's more of a cut and swing sort of dog, and he's kind of, the way his tracking ability goes sometimes is not always nose down exactly like a bloodhound would be, which is more of just nose down tracking dog. So he will just kind of pick out spots. Okay, this isn't here. Dogs will correct themselves. And again, that's why it's best to just follow the dog when you're out there. I've learned, and you learn it the hard way when you're tracking or not. Their nose knows best. It's a lot of times you will run into situations where you don't see blood, and a hunter might go, "Hey, I'm not seeing blood over here." Well, I gotta follow the dog.
Yep.
there's a reason we get called out, and maybe we'll run into blood later, or we just find your deer. Sometimes the dog can just wind it and decide to get lazy, and they know where it's at, and they'll just go right to it. So sometimes it's also good to read the dog, though, because I mean they are stuck to that interdigital scent. But I've noticed even with my dog, being he has part border collie in him, possibly is the reason that he does this, is he will try and herd all the live deer out of the area from a dead deer, actually, first. Every dog is different. Their prey drive is different. Training times are different. But there is like a general timeline. Within a year, you can be tracking with a dog a year or two. But a finished dog, that can even take years to accomplish. To get a truly finished, successful dog can really take up to 4 or 5 years, maybe not until the dog is in their true prime, 6 years. It all depends on how much a person exposes that dog and how well the training is, and just how well the dog can understand it. But I believe many dogs can track, and we've also seen in Oklahoma. There's a dog named Brutus. He's actually a pug mix. Awesome underbite, and that dog has a great prey drive. And yeah, and there's Teckles, which are a small breed, kind of like a dachshund, like a wiener dog. But those little dogs will track amazingly. One of the best that I've seen. There is plenty of breeds and plenty of mixed breed dogs that just everybody does amazing with, and it's all about the connection that person has with the dog, and the leash, and just how they utilize themselves and their gear.
Now, similar to like other field trials, there's field trials for tracking dogs, correct? Is that something that you get into at all?
Yeah, we have, so like I call it simulations, is how we practice. There is also certifications on unitedbloodtrackers.org. That's where you can find a tracker as well. And if you actually check out the map, there is on the website a map that shows most of the states are legal now for using a tracking dog.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Minnesota was about 4 years ago, and so there's plenty of states. I think Hawaii is maybe one that isn't allowed to have tracking dogs, but almost Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Arizona is not allowed. Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts are not allowed, but pretty much everywhere else is. Actually, Hawaii is allowed. Yeah, so it's legal in a lot of places, and Wisconsin has been doing it for a long time, and they have a wonderful organization over there as well. Wonderful resources, Michigan, wonderful resources about every state that it's legal. Everybody has wonderful resources, and we're seeing a lot more members. I've seen personally more members in Minnesota on the United Blood Trackers group, and they run tests for each dog at different levels. So you can test your dog, and it can help certify that a dog is suitable for helping find your deer. Nothing against, trying it yourself. That's how I got into it, was with my bird dog, and I just took him out and I gave it a shot before I knew it was even a thing. But check out the Minnesota laws and rules and regulations of course, because they do have rules around it now. Leashes, leash length, of course, and putting contacts on your dog or hound. But and each year it can change. So
yeah, that's the important part, right? Is staying legal, and yeah, it's a great resource to have, but we want to make sure that it's something that we continue to be able to utilize and not take advantage of it or use it in ways that it shouldn't be used.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of states have their own like Facebook groups and such, is how you can find a lot of trackers per state as well. Like for Minnesota, we have the Minnesota Tracking Dogs on Facebook, which is ultimately how we connected.
Yep.
And yeah, it's another great resource for each state to have their own individual kind of network of people. And like Minnesota Tracking Dogs, we have our map, and you can find us with our certified dogs this year now. We just finally tested out. Chevy's level 1. Hades being so young, we'll work on getting him certified for sure.
Yeah.
But I look forward to possibly running level 2 tests with Chevy, but yeah, so those are the certifications involved.
Okay, that's pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, have you been on like any memorable hunts or memorable tracks where something weird happened, something out of the normal happened, or found something you weren't expecting to find?
There's every track is a different story. Like yours was definitely memorable. Just the size of that buck was crazy, and how he was. We kind of walked right past him on the walking path ultimately.
Yeah.
And we literally came, but we had to track him how we have to track him, and we kind of probably walked past him sleeping, and we went all the way around, and we went back to the cattails, back to the creek, and that we started from where we had to go, and we gave that dog that line, and he ran that track. And I do remember he was on it even after the rain, which is amazing actually, because you would think you can't track a dog or track a deer after it rains, but rain or snow, it has to be very heavy rain or very heavy snow for a dog to actually not be able to track it. We find some light rain will help hold that scent in, that interdigital gland. Even though you might not be able to see blood, that dog will track it probably better than they can on a dry, hot day. So there's even certain pavement can be more difficult to track on because of that foot scent not being placed down as well in the pavement versus grass and dirt. So different terrains really, and moistures also come into play, and it's like a science when it comes to tracking with the hound. We find we're looking at blood. It's completely different as just shooting something and looking for a blood trail. It's once you start tracking, you're putting everything into perspective, and that's the ultimate goal, is finding the animal, and so that's what we're there for, and that's what we love to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm fun. You talked about it, but where we finally ended up finding that buck was, I'd say 60 yards from where we'd parked the trucks. It was right where we had started, and we had to go walk almost 2 miles to get back to that point and find that deer. But the dog led us right there, and at the end, Chevy was on it so fast that I couldn't keep up, and I lost you guys in the cattails, and all of a sudden I heard you yell, "There he is!"
Yep, I see him laying there, and I'm like, "This thing's huge," and dog gets a whiff of him, and he finally wakes up, and he just starts running. I think we sent that deer basically to the kids' park. Yeah. It's a big old deer running. I don't know where he went after that. I lost complete sight of him, and he was running very healthily, so he was there to live another day.
Yeah, and for me, with a deer like that was really the reason that I wanted to have you guys out, was the amount of blood that I was seeing. I wasn't confident that I'd killed the deer, but I also didn't want to leave a deer that caliber just laying in the weeds. And I mean, I wouldn't want to leave any deer laying in the weeds if I can find it, but you put a little bit more effort into the big ones when you shoot them. And
that's, exactly like that. You want to find it. And we also want to be there for closure. I want to tell you, I've even helped, last year we helped a couple gentlemen actually hunt their deer down again. And so that was amazing. So, I mean, I don't think a track is over either until that deer is gone or until we can't catch up to it any longer. But we do also like to be ethical. If I can tell a deer is healthy, I do back out. I can't follow a deer with my dog and have anybody hunt it. I can locate it, but then by law, we're in Minnesota supposed to leave the area. So, and that's what I did. I left the area, and we were able to give a general location to a hunter last year, and he was able to go back. This is a memorable story right here. So he, last year we took a track, I won't say where in Minnesota, but it was another nice buck, and he was there with his kids and showing them we're looking for his deer. I took my dog out, and this was another one that was alive, and just, it happens. Shoulder shot, it was running, but I could see he was kind of stumbling as he was running. So I was almost able to catch up to this deer at about 3/4 of a mile in, and then but I just couldn't run up to him, and the hunter didn't get to catch up to him to confirm as well, but I was able to see that was the deer he was looking after. We went almost another mile. Chevy was just running like crazy after this one again, being that condition and how he tracks with his current prey drive on that type of a track. And he went crazy after that, and we caught it again after like another mile in, and he got sight of it, and he goes, that's my buck. I'm like, I can't catch up to him. We keep trying, but he's stumbling, but I see he keeps laying down. So I suggested be safe, come back maybe with your bow, hunt the evening after him. And he went until the job was finished, and he didn't give up, and he located this buck behind a stump. And he kind of did the thing we all do as hunters and just goes, I have this opportunity and I'm not going to let it slip. And he took the opportunity, tried to shoot it in the head, maybe in the neck. I can't remember exactly, but he said he shot it. It somehow landed in its eye, and this thing got up and went after him. Yeah, he said it was ready to stampede, and it knew where he was. He put in one more arrow. He had just a barely amount of time, and he put in one more shot in the vitals. He tells me he hid about behind a tree, and he just waited for the rustling to stop. And he said he got his buck, and it was a nice buck. He sent me a picture. I was at home taking a nap after tracking it all morning. So, yeah. And then we wake up, and he sends me a picture of him and all his kids and his family dog, and they're holding this deer that he got that Chevy was able to at least locate, and we were able to back out, see its condition, and I knew he could at least catch up to it. And so, I mean, there's even tracks like that.
That's a cool story.
Another memorable one was, as well as yours, even just crazy stories of people not realizing tracking is a thing anymore. One time I pulled into a place and a guy came over, and I didn't know where I was going specifically, and the GPS was messed up. I turned around in somebody's driveway, which is totally fine, and the guy came over, and he must have knew I was a tracker and coming, and neighbor must have told him or something, and he must have been anti-hunter or something, and he came over puffing his chest, and he was chest to chest with me, and I have a dog. Chevy, I don't know if you remember, he will bite people.
Yeah, he's intimidating.
He is an intimidating dog. He is just very protective around his spaces, and I'm surprised my dog didn't bite him. And he was ready to fight me, I guess, and saying this is illegal, but that's the thing. It's not. It's recently legalized about 4 years ago in Minnesota, and it's a wonderful thing. So
yeah. I think the anti-hunters should get behind it, if anything, because I mean, you've already shot the animal at this point. We're just doing a better job of recovering. We're getting more of the animals that we've shot out of the woods that would have just been left behind. So
it's amazing. 2 years ago, it was over 100 deer found in Minnesota by about like 17 of us that recorded it. Yeah. 16, 17 of us, I can't remember, but it was definitely over 100 deer just recovered. I can't tell you how many calls that were taken or how many deer were even tracked, but it's about, I could say it's a 50-50 shot, whether we find your deer or not. It's just 50-50. There's some people with better percentages, some people with not so much better percentages, but it's all about just getting out there, taking that track and giving it your all. Yeah. And percentages can change as well as with capability of dogs, but it's amazing. I can't even call it a sport, maybe a hobby or lifestyle, because it kind of takes over your life, and you have these dogs now that you got to take care of. But yeah, like in Germany, they utilize tracking as essential, and they don't hunt boar or deer unless a tracking team is on call. So they see it as a little different, and that's, I believe, ethical, but I don't believe the United States will ever be at that point. But I mean, having a group of maybe 20 people in Minnesota like last year finding about 150 deer or more, that's a lot of meat on the table, and that's a lot of deer located, and just it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I guess if I had one recommendation to anybody, I'd say get on your local, whether it's your state page or your local page, find a tracking dog that's near you. Don't bother the person. Don't reach out to them in advance, but have that person that
you can.
Oh, you can. All right.
Oh, you can definitely message us. Please do. If you're even just asking for tips, we'd love to help. Any information as shot, you can ask us about shot placement. We'll tell you the best shot placement is the double lung. That's the way to do it. But it doesn't always just work that way because of angles. But that's the way to do it. Heart is a very hard target. It's a lot smaller, so just go for the bigger target that's more lethal or just as lethal as the double lung. And but no matter what, we don't judge a call. We like to say, like, we're interrogating you, but we're not interrogating you. We're not judging. We want all the details. We want to hear every little bit of details. You can include blood, color, distance traveled is another one. That's why I like to use Shane's website. He, in his statistics, he will label an average track distance is about, for all total of his tracks over the few years, is 324 yards. So a lot of times if we hear, hey, we tracked this thing 600 yards, we can kind of expect, okay, maybe we have a deer that could possibly still be running, or just maybe this deer was pushed. Another thing is just wait times, and that's why I like to use this wait time document, but I don't believe a lot of these wait times are actually they're quite critical, but I think they could even go longer. Some gut shots, it says 12 to 24 hours is a good amount of time to look. I don't even want to look at a gut shot most of the time until 24 hours, just because some gut shots we've seen could take 2 days. But some deer could possibly maybe take a week to track or possibly expire. Maybe a coyote will eventually catch up to them. So there's all sorts of things that can happen, and it is a science, and these deer obviously they have a will to live. So they're not ready to die. Even after heart shots, you hear crazy stories of how fast and how hard a buck can run even after getting hit in the heart. That even you'd think you'd be on the ground wincing. I would. I mean, I wouldn't be alive probably, but these deer are running like crazy through the woods, and they're jumping. It's not like you can always follow the blood spot for spot. And like you said, when we took Chevy, he found it in 20 minutes. That's another thing we like to pride on, is just how fast we can end up catching up to your deer. Like, I remember when I was young, 16 years old, maybe 17, just a teenager hunting with my dad, and when he shot those deer, and how long we were tracking on our hands and knees in the neighbor's swamp, and for like what felt like miles, and we finally get home back to the cabin at like 11 o'clock, and then we hear just wolves, and it wasn't even coyotes, it was wolves howling. It's scary being out there for that long and with that much precious cargo and all these other animals in the wilderness just ready to take a nip at it, like such as coyotes and such. And even if there's a dog and a tracker that you want to get a hold of, definitely get a hold of us even ahead of time. When in doubt, back out, we like to say is the term.
Yep.
Call us you can even call us from the stand. Just ask. A lot of people are just so shooken up that they shot a deer, they're afraid to even get off the stand. Call us. We love the clean tracks, or we love a track that maybe has been tracked until you cannot follow blood, and that's when we come in, and that's when we need to be utilized and as a group, and that's when you need us basically as a hunter, and that's where we like to help, because it's a mystery to us, and it's a challenge that we like to take along with a dog and get that dog doing what they love most, is tracking, hunting, being out there too.
Yep. So you had mentioned when in doubt, back out. Make sure you give it extra time. is there any other advice that you'd give to bow hunters or to deer hunters that is going to increase their odds of finding deer with or without the dog? What things can they do to increase their success?
Ultimately is shot placement, but also like maybe if you have utilization of some equipment to maybe videotape. We've seen some videos, but even videos can be kind of deceiving without having HD, and we've had to put stuff into still frames and looked at them as a group, and we're debating on where exactly it hit, and we end up overlooking this video. Somebody puts it in HD and they're going, no, this looks like actually it hit here. So it's all about giving the tracker the right amount of data, or taking in the right amount of data as a hunter, and just taking the knowledge around it. A lot of times these, like I noticed, like on social media, is everybody just wants to bash each other. Oh, you can't shoot, or I drop them in 2 seconds. That's not always the case. I like to say as a tracker, either you ain't hunted enough yet, or yeah, it's just either you ain't hunted enough yet, or you're not being honest. Everybody has taken a bad shot, I think, in their lifetime, and or even a good shot. I've tracked for like my best friend. Another story is I tracked for my best friend at night this past season. We took Chevy out, and his deer was shot in the lungs. Wonderful shot, actually. I can't remember if it penetrated both lungs, but it was definitely a lung, good blood, and it just got to become like pin drops. And Chevy, they searched all day, like 6 guys, and he shot another deer in the same area, and I just kept looking. We found the gut pile. We had to come back. It took us, I don't know how many tries, and trackers, we will reset our dogs if we don't think they're on the current track. So that we will ultimately decide, all right, let's take the dog, rewind back, and there are times we have to do that, and the dog will hit a new scent, and they'll go after it, and it's up to us to read the body language. And so like even with a good shot, sometimes it's just hard to tell, or with rain conditions, dew conditions, blood can wash away. But ultimately wait time, I don't want to say wait longer, but just get a hold of your tracker, and even if you take a shot and you have questions, it's great to do that. We don't like specifically getting a call where it's saying, hey, I need you. We took a shot, and then we get details, and then they're like, I don't need you. At least just kind of come forward. We're just looking for details. Of course, all of us would love to answer, and during the season, we will answer phones till 11 p.m. at night, and some of us get pretty busy to the point of where maybe we can't answer, but we do our best, and we will revert to other trackers. And that's the whole point of the network, is connecting together as trackers and along with hunters, and putting that communication together. The amount of details is key as a hunter. Providing those details is it's key, and patience is key as well. I like to say if you and practice as a hunter, practice as a tracker. I still like to hunt, so now as when I hunt, I just take the dog out. As soon as I take a shot, I like to think back and try and remember best where that shot placement was. Maybe look at the hit site, then put that into perspective. Okay, maybe I got a good shot, or maybe I got a liver shot. Maybe I should wait 12 hours, and then I'll put my dog on it, and now it's just a part of hunting for me as well. So it's been great having those dogs along with as a hunter myself. It's great having the dogs along for the trip.
Yep. Yeah. Now, say somebody's out there, shoot a deer. They're confident that they're going to be able to track it. They start tracking it. They make it 100 yards, 200 yards, whatever it is. And they get to a point where they're struggling, whether the blood's drying up, crosses a creek, something where they lose the blood. How far from that point should they go before they say, hey, maybe this is a situation where I need to back out and not spread the scent around? What's that sign where somebody should call you guys?
Essentially, until you run out of sign or good sign, and you're just maybe dealing with pin drops, and you're like, I can't even look on my hands and knees anymore. Or also, I like to think of it as like a 200-yard rule. 200 yards, if you're kind of going past 200 yards, you maybe just want to call it a dog. And then, yeah, deer can run in circles. They could run in a straight line. We can never ultimately tell. Sometimes they'll want to go towards the water. Maybe sometimes they want to go in the middle of a field and lay down. They ultimately will go where they feel safe, and I can't speak for the deer, to be honest, but they like to do their own thing, and they have that will to survive. And so, yeah, a good rule of thumb is maybe 100, 200 yards, and just have developed the knowledge to look for that sign. Maybe even as a hunter, maybe you just want to read that book by John again. It's great, even if you don't have a dog. There is a lot of great information on tracking deer, or there are also other books on just looking at certain blood trails, and sometimes there's deceiving blood trails, like you would think bubbly pink bright blood. When it's pink, a lot of times can be lung, but also bubbly blood can also come from muscles moving the blood around, and then once it leaves the deer, it can form in bubbles on the ground, and it can a lot of times be perceived as lung blood. And that's another great reason to take pictures if you can. For really good pictures for a tracker, we can take a look at it, take that distance into perspective, take your specific shot placement into perspective. Some trackers will even send like a picture of a deer with a grid on it.
Yep.
And I like to do that as well. And I just go, give me the best idea of where you think you hit it, and just be honest. I'm not here to judge. It's the least I care about. I just got to know how and when to go after your deer, and how to do it the best I can to my ability, based off what I've seen. And I'm still learning as well, even as a dog owner and training. And I like to even ask questions too when they arise, to other guys like Al Sherman over in Wisconsin. He's judge too for the United Blood Trackers. Amazing guy, and I look up to him ultimately when it comes to tracking. And the group personally has changed my life. Since I got into it at like 21 years old, I could be causing a lot more trouble right now, and I'm instead obsessed with tracking. And so I think it's a lot better for me as a hobby. And I used to have a whole bunch of other hobbies personally, and I just decided I'm just gonna focus on this. And so, yeah, this is what I invest in. And yeah, the tracking book, any information that you can get in regards to tracking as a hunter, because I believe tracking is a part of hunting. There's hunting, and then there's tracking.
Yeah.
And tracking can just be another hunt again. When you locate that animal, maybe it's just running across the creek a bit slow, and you can put in another shot. You're still hunting it as you're tracking. Even a bear laying down can still be alive and sleeping, and so be cautious.
Yeah,
Take it with the stick. Keep your distance. Even bucks, we've caught them, think they're dead, sleeping, and they all of a sudden we've had trackers stand around them, celebrate, and all of a sudden the deer, after 5-10 minutes of them being around it, gets up and runs. Not even kidding you.
That's got to be an exciting, kind of frightening experience, kind of surprise you at least.
Yeah, and crazy thing is that deer was actually tracked again the next day, I believe, and the tracker, he found it again. It was an amazing story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so they caught up to that thing, and they had to cross neighbors' yards and property lines, but with proper permission and following all the rules and the law, they caught up to that buck.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
It was amazing.
Nice.
I don't think it was bleeding the whole way. So since this was legal, this has really helped hunters, and as well as even dog owners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that we really like on the show is youth hunters and getting the youth out and exposed and their first times out in the fields and like that. How many first deer have you been able to recover, or first bucks have you been able to recover for people?
I wish I would have more kids I could track for. Their youth hunters are, I think, my favorite hunter to go track for. I think a lot of people can speak for, because you see a young kid and their eyes light up. They're super excited about finding a deer, and they, as young as they are, they're just so honest, and they have no idea, what they're in for, and when it comes to hunting, and their eyes light up. That's my dream, is to track for any youth hunter, really. And I would love to track for any youth hunter within my area for free. I'd definitely myself go over there, and I just want to help a youth hunter out. But I haven't had personally that opportunity yet, surprisingly. Before, I worked a second shift, and just this year I'm actually working a first shift position. Since I started tracking, before I was working a second shift job tracking, so I was actually showing up to some tracks in the middle of the night, or very early in the morning, and just never got that opportunity for that call yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Nice.
And youth hunting, youth tracking, I think a lot of trackers are of a more mature age, comes with experience and everything. I'm personally, I'm one of, I think, the younger ones of the tracking group in Minnesota, at least, but I like seeing the enthusiasm, the willingness to learn from a young hunter, and it's just, that's how it lives on, is the more young hunters, the better. The more people who get into it, because maybe life goes on, and that young kid can't hunt until maybe a later point in life, but at least that is there. And that's what a lot of us like to hunt for is, I remember hunting with my dad, and I'll always have that memory, and I won't give that up. So, and that's probably my favorite memories with them, is hunting.
Right.
People remember that, hunting with their grandfathers and such. And so I want that. It's like a spirit that lives on. Yep. Is hunting, and it does. So maybe if I one day have kids, I'd definitely make them part of a tracking family. Take the dogs out when I can't and whatnot. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I still remember my first morning sitting out deer hunting, and you look around and every piece of grass and every bush turns into a deer right as the sun's coming up, and that's an exciting experience. So. And
watching just the sunrise and the world change around you, literally. You think you're just sitting at work and you don't even take a look out the window and notice it's raining sometimes, but you're out there and you notice every blade of grass moving, you notice every squirrel in the tree, causing a nuisance in the woods and tricking you, basically. But that's what it's all about, is you're noticing this whole ecosystem around you changing as time goes by, whereas you could just sit at home and not get to experience that. And it's amazing watching the sunrise and the sunsets and that world around you as you sit or as you hunt. Still hunting is also really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons that I got into bow hunting, was that sitting around seeing the sunrise, watching nature, and just being able to sit out quietly and watch things happen around you.
Even if, some days it's not what you expect and you don't see a deer, but that's hunting. And yeah, you learn to take it in, and deer are a herd. They have that herd mentality at the times. They like to move sometimes as a group or on their own, and you can never tell exactly where they will be, or if they want to bed down that day or week. They just maybe want to hit the beds, hit the hay, or they want to go hit the feed. And so it's always different times of the season, the rut, crazy time. And so it's just a matter of getting out there, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, you'd mentioned hunting with your dad. I think that kind of segues perfect into asking the questions that we like to ask all of our first-time podcast guests. So we'll start off with the first one, and that's, what's your most memorable hunt that you've ever been on?
When it comes to a hunt, I would say probably the one where we were tracking on our hands and knees with my dad. So this one I was, again, like 15, 16 years old. I was in a stand in Wisconsin, and my dad was somewhere off behind me, a few hundred yards, way in the woods. I couldn't see him. but he was part of the part of the walking trail on the way in, and I just went further to my stand, and we were sitting there, and it's evening time, and I hear him take some shots. I think 2 shots, and we were only allowed to use, I think, slug guns there, or that's just the only other gun he had was a slug. And I don't know how this happened, but he shot this deer, and he knew he had his sights on this one doe, but I think the bullet or the slug, I think, ricocheted, or it changed trajectory within the deer or something, and he actually collateraled on 2 deer. He hit 2 deer. So this one was very injured. It looked like when it ran past my stand, I could see matter hanging out of one side of it. And it wasn't just blood, it was part of its insides, and it was an insane sight to see it, my young age, but that's what it is. It's hunting, and it's a matter of retrieving that animal, putting that food on the table for yourself as a human, and ultimately as a mammal. And so that's part of what we need to eat as well, just like any other animal in the woods. And whether it goes to a wolf, a bear, coyote, or us, as long as somebody is eating and the ecosystem is thriving and conservation is happening and populations are growing when it comes to deer populations and such. That's what it's all about. And my dad took that shot on that deer. I see it run by my stand too fast behind me. I could just get a glimpse of it, and it went back up this hill in the woods, and I just couldn't get another shot in at the time. And so that's part of when it comes to pushing deer, is it's best to, when in doubt, back out, and also not push that deer. Some people will think they have a great shot. Deer lays down right in front of them, and they go up to it, and it picks up and runs. And it's very key to have that patience, and even on a heart shot, maybe give it 2 hours, 1 or 2 hours. That meat should still be just fine. Even if you say it lay down in front of you, maybe wait a half hour in the stand even before you get off of it, is just let that animal rest and give them their time. And then at that point, relax, put all the details into perspective, and go from there. And then take in more details from tracking the blood and looking at the hit site and all that. And so, back to that, I see this deer running up the hill, and I finally, I think, phoned my dad, and, I waited. I'm like, I see a deer ran by. Was that you that shot? And we get together. He's like, yeah, let's start tracking. This was like 5 p.m. It wasn't exactly dark yet, so we finally managed to meet up, get a hold of each other on the phones, even on silent and such. And so I told him I saw his deer where it ran, but we didn't have much blood, and this was well before I knew about tracking, so this is almost like 10 years ago. And my dad's like, we got to find these 2 deer. So we look for one, and we just cannot follow the blood for one of them, and I think that was the second one he hit, the further one, and we knew that one was just gonna be a goner. Then we started going back to the other track, which looked easier. We started following blood, and I think from like 6 p.m. to like 11 p.m. we were on our hands and knees on the neighbor's property, like just pin drops of blood, and my dad couldn't even see it anymore because of his eyesight, and I was just young and I didn't have glasses at the time. I was able to see it just fine, but until it was literally just blades of grass with pin drops of blood, and it's long grass, there was no hope in finding it without a dog. And I think it was technically legal in Wisconsin to track there, but I had no idea about it at that age. And so we just had to let it go, and we come back and just so tired and so beat. It wasn't a good feeling, but I didn't feel like I wanted to just give up hunting. I think it was just that was my first real track.
Yep.
And that was without a dog or before I shot a deer, but it was maybe a 40-yard track. That was where I got to truly see how far these animals can go. And I can I could probably say we went for miles that day, my dad and I, looking for that thing on the neighbor's swamp, across the woods. And it was a wicked terrain. And yeah, I wouldn't trade that moment for the world, though. It's hard of work as it was. Just kind of sitting back and, my dad kind of standing there going, "What do you think?" And we're scratching our heads, and I'm just kind of looking at it, and I just had a moment to look at the grass just blow away, and just kind of sit there and think, well, as much as this sucks looking for this thing, we're at least on some beautiful territory and beautiful terrain, and unfortunately, maybe this will feed another mammal.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's part of hunting. That will maybe feed some other mammal in the woods, whether it was, I think, wolves is what we heard howling, or coyotes, but they're all part of the ecosystem. And so we got to do our part in just retrieving it. And I think tracking has helped retrieve a lot of deer for at least Minnesota.
Yep. Yeah. It sounds like you guys put in quite the effort to try and find it. That's 6 hours of searching in the dark that's a long time.
I can say we've gone further too. But that one was just memorable. Yeah, my dad and I, he's not the best shot, but he's a great guy to hunt with, and he has taken some deer, and he has taken some good shots. So it happens to everybody.
Yep.
But yeah, just this year I found out I have bad eyesight, and it wasn't until I'm at work reading minuscule prints, blueprints and schematics that are so small that I'm kind of like, you know what, this might be a little bit of a struggle. And I did need glasses when I was younger, but I thought my eyesight's probably fine, and come to find out, again, I should wear glasses. So maybe that threw me off. And there's bow hunting as well as a science. When it comes to what arrow you use, what broad tip you're using, the trajectory, are you following your arrow upon your shot, and are you holding it at the same anchor point as what you train with? And that repetition is key. I want to say a lot about looking at the big picture and just breaking it all down. Yeah. And as a hunter and as a tracker.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot to break it all down. I know last year after I shot that buck and I was sitting in the tree trying to get a hold of trackers and stuff, I found an app that they have on your phone, and you can go in and set all the different parameters for your shot. You can line the deer up just how it was, and say, hey, this is where I put my pin when I let go, and this is the yardage I thought I had it at.
Yep.
And it's like, man, the difference from being a heart shot or a double lung shot on that deer that I was looking at to missing just barely underneath the chest cavity and hitting just that far elbow, which is what I think happened, having time to think about it.
Yeah.
It's not much. It's very small differences in the speed of the arrow or the wind that matter a lot. So
it's all about the little details and how you can look at that big picture and break it down in that little amount of time that you have to retrieve that animal. Yeah. It's a lot of information to take in, honestly, and I like to call it deer math. You're doing the math in your head on how are you going to find this thing. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's all about, like you said, when it comes back to the youth hunters, it's all about the memories you make with, for me, it's the memories I make with the trackers, the memories I make with in the woods with my dad, and even along with you now where you're having a podcast. So it's all about the memories we make, and even with the dogs. And I'll always look back on it as what is the best part of my life is tracking, hunting, and doing this thing that I love.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Second question that we always ask our new guests is, what's your dream hunt? Say money's no object. You can go anywhere, travel anywhere. What's your dream animal, dream hunt that you want to do?
I haven't really thought on it exactly. I've got a dream track.
Okay.
I just want to go to, like, let's say somewhere in Europe, Western Europe, like Germany, like, because of how much they have established tracking and the system and just their teams. They've been tracking for a lot longer than we've been legal to track. So there's trackers out there that are so knowledgeable, but we don't even speak the same language. And I've just always, being where my parents are from Europe originally, They're immigrants, and I was born here, and I had that aspect growing up, and I've always maybe wanted to go back to the overseas in the world, and at least one point in my life, and maybe ship a dog with me. And I don't think Chevy can do it because of his size, and he's a nervous fellow. That dog likes to be around his home environment and just track basically, and close to home, and then he likes to go sleep in his own bed at night. But yeah, maybe one day I can go take a track overseas for a deer or a boar, maybe in Germany. But that requires in Germany testing. They have their own testing to even track over there, and I believe more strict set of rules, and it's a lot of dealing with the dog's obedience as well, and it's amazing though, I believe, having that structure. And I've just dreamed of going maybe, or even New Zealand, doing a track just somewhere overseas where I can go witness another environment. I really enjoy, my favorite part of tracking is just seeing the environments I get to go to without, I don't have that permission maybe, or I wouldn't just be walking my dog in that woods like you and I did in the park, and getting to see what that swamp is like, what that cattail's like, and how hard it is to walk through. That's what I like, is just experiencing that and going through that.
Yeah. I grew up hunting, doing deer drives, and walking through cattails, and
yeah,
I've never been in cattails that were so high above my head. They must have been 10 to 12 feet tall at some points. It was crazy in there.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. I mean, that was some tough walking, and sometimes I want to kick myself in the ass for taking a track through that, but I can't decide, and I'll take a track for whatever reason. I'm not going to overlook that, and I just like to think of it as when I get home, either way, I'm tired, and I'm still happy I did what I like to do, and I go home happy doing that. And as I wish I could do it as long as I live, tracking and hunting. But yeah.
Awesome. Last question for you. We, like I'd mentioned before, we really like to, educate the next generation of hunters, youth hunters, things like that. If you have any advice or one piece of advice for a youth hunter, or one sort of thing you'd recommend to a youth hunter, what would that be?
First piece of advice is don't give up. Tracking, hunting, however you want to look at it, is just don't give up. If you ever have to ask anybody anything, ask them. Feel free to ask. A lot of people like to ask questions, and if somebody doesn't give you the right answer, then maybe look for somebody else who can give the right answer, and just communicate and ask away. And don't give up, and just keep striving. Even if somebody maybe critiques a shot you took, don't look at it that way. Just let them be, and you're gonna keep hunting until you see the next deer, until you maybe come across that same buck again. You just don't give up, and you just keep hunting for years to come, and you keep maybe providing deer on the table and some venison maybe for your friends, a grill out. It's an amazing thing, to just keep going, keep striving. Another thing is just keep learning. Let's say like these documents, I like to look at them, and I still like to look at tracks and put my own perspective or details that I've taken into it. But I also like to look at like what Shane has put out. This is years of data, and it's truly, he looks at pass-throughs, non-pass-throughs. He looks at gut shots, liver shots, one lung shots, percentages. I mean, just telling you what he's seeing for percentages of compound bows versus crossbows. I mean, just taking that information, and when you don't give up, all you can do is learn. Just keep striving, and yeah.
That's some great advice.
Thank you.
Great advice. Naz, thanks for joining us on the show. It's been awesome. Everybody at home, go out, check out the Minnesota Tracking Dogs Facebook page. Or if you're not from Minnesota, go find a page for your local Tracking Dogs page. Get in contact with some trackers, and really boost that odds of finding your animal if you make a bad shot this fall,
or even a good shot.
Yeah, even a good shot.
I mean, we can find it maybe faster, or help along the way. Also, with just there's nerves that come into play. We're all human, and there's so many perspectives and aspects and things we have to take into play.
Yeah, awesome. Well said. Guys, we will be back next week. This week's episode was brought to you by Ridge Rock Hunt Club. Go check them out. Derek and Lacey do a great job of providing hunts for hunters who are looking to get into some of those dream hunts throughout the country. We'll be back next week. It may be Sam, it may be me. Either way, we will see you then. Thanks for joining us on Follow Up Session Podcast.